The recent escalation in the Middle East has once again brought to the forefront a familiar group of voices, the neoconservatives. These voices have a long history of influencing US foreign policy, often advocating for aggressive stances and military interventions. These individuals and think tanks, with their hawkish ideology and penchant for military solutions, are pushing the United States towards another potential quagmire, this time with Iran. Their influence is pervasive, reaching into the highest levels of government and shaping public discourse. Their playbook is recognizable, relying on fear-mongering, exaggeration of threats, and a disdain for diplomacy. By painting adversaries in the darkest possible light, they create a sense of urgency and inevitability around military action. This dangerous rhetoric, if left unchecked, could lead the US down a path of unnecessary and devastating conflict. The echoes of past wars, with their heavy toll on human lives and resources, serve as a stark reminder of the costs of such policies. The neoconservative worldview is rooted in the belief that American military power is the primary tool for shaping the global order. They see the projection of force as a means to maintain US dominance and deter potential adversaries. They advocate for a muscular foreign policy, often dismissive of international institutions and multilateral approaches. Diplomacy and negotiation are seen as signs of weakness, rather than essential tools for conflict resolution. This ideology gained significant traction after the 9/11 attacks, providing the justification for the invasion of Iraq and the subsequent war on terror. The consequences of these actions are still felt today, with ongoing instability in the region. The neoconservative agenda is being advanced through a network of think tanks, media outlets, and influential individuals within the government. These entities work in concert to shape public opinion and policy decisions. These voices consistently portray Iran as an existential threat, emphasizing its nuclear program and support for groups like Hamas. This portrayal simplifies a complex geopolitical landscape into a binary of good versus evil. Their narrative conveniently ignores the complexities of the region and the potential consequences of military action. The intricate web of alliances, historical grievances, and socio-political dynamics are often overlooked in favor of a more straightforward, albeit misleading, storyline. The push for war with Iran bears striking similarities to the lead-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The echoes of past mistakes are loud and clear, yet seem to be ignored by those in power. In both cases, neoconservative voices played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative and pushing for military action. These influential figures have consistently advocated for a hardline approach, often disregarding the complex realities on the ground. The Bush administration's claims about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction and its alleged links to al-Qaeda proved to be false, exposing the flawed intelligence and manipulative tactics used to justify the war. This deception led to a loss of trust in government institutions and media. The Iraq War had devastating consequences, resulting in hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths, displacing millions, and destabilizing the entire region. The human cost was immense, with families torn apart and communities destroyed. The rise of ISIS can be directly traced back to the power vacuum created by the US invasion. This unintended consequence has led to further violence and instability, affecting not just Iraq, but the entire Middle East. Despite this catastrophic failure, neoconservatives seem to have learned little from the experience. Their continued influence in shaping foreign policy raises serious concerns about future conflicts. The same flawed arguments that were used to justify the Iraq War are now being recycled in the case of Iran. These arguments are being presented with a similar sense of urgency and inevitability, despite the lessons of the past. Neoconservatives are once again exaggerating the threat, portraying Iran as an imminent danger to the US and its allies. This portrayal is often based on selective information and worst-case scenarios. Their rhetoric ignores the lessons of Iraq, demonstrating a dangerous disregard for the potential costs of another Middle Eastern war. The voices of caution and reason are often drowned out by the drumbeats of war, risking another tragic chapter in history. The recent attacks by Hamas on Israel have provided neoconservatives with the perfect opportunity to advance their agenda. They have seized on this tragedy to demonize Iran, portraying it as the mastermind behind the attacks and calling for a forceful response. This narrative, however, oversimplifies a complex situation and ignores the long-standing grievances that fuel the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Iran, while providing support to Hamas, is not the root cause of the conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a deeply rooted issue with a long and bloody history. Focusing solely on Iran's role ignores the underlying factors that contribute to the cycle of violence. Neoconservatives exploit these crises to justify their predetermined objective regime change in Iran. The push for war with Iran is not about bringing peace or stability to the Middle East. It is about advancing a neoconservative agenda that seeks to reshape the region according to US interests. This agenda is driven by a dangerous combination of ideology and a thirst for power, with little regard for the human costs involved. Section 4. Manufacturing consent. Media's role in shaping the narrative. The media plays a crucial role in shaping public opinion and influencing foreign policy decisions. In the lead-up to the Iraq War, many media outlets uncritically amplified the Bush administration's claims, failing to challenge the flawed intelligence or provide alternative perspectives. This failure contributed to the public's acceptance of the war, demonstrating the power of media narratives. Today, we are witnessing a similar pattern emerging in the coverage of Iran. Many media outlets are uncritically repeating the neoconservative narrative, portraying Iran as an imminent threat and presenting war as an inevitable outcome. This one-sided coverage fails to provide the public with a nuanced understanding of the situation. It is essential for journalists and media organizations to resist the pressure to conform to the dominant narrative. They have a responsibility to provide the public with accurate, balanced, and critical reporting. This includes challenging the claims of those in power, amplifying dissenting voices, and providing context to complex geopolitical issues. Section 5. A dangerous gamble. The devastating costs of war with Iran. The potential consequences of a war with Iran are too dire to ignore. Iran is not Iraq. It is a much larger and more powerful country with a sophisticated military and a complex network of regional alliances. A war with Iran would be far more costly and unpredictable than the Iraq War, with the potential to ignite a wider regional conflict. The human cost of such a war would be catastrophic. Millions of lives would be at risk, both in Iran and in neighboring countries. The region would be plunged into further chaos and instability with devastating consequences for civilians. The economic fallout would be global, disrupting energy markets and exacerbating existing crises. Beyond the immediate devastation, a war with Iran would have long-term consequences for the United States. It would further damage America's global reputation, erode its moral authority, and undermine its credibility on the world stage. It would also divert resources away from pressing domestic issues and strengthen extremist groups like ISIS. Section 6. Choosing diplomacy, a path towards peace and stability. Despite the escalating rhetoric and the dangerous push for war, there is still a path towards peace and stability in the Middle East. This path, though fraught with challenges, offers a beacon of hope in a region long plagued by conflict and turmoil. This path requires a commitment to diplomacy, a willingness to engage in dialogue with adversaries, and a recognition that military solutions are not always the answer. It demands patience, understanding, and a genuine desire to find common ground, even when it seems elusive. The United States should return to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the nuclear deal that was negotiated with Iran and other world powers in 2015. This agreement was a significant step towards curbing nuclear proliferation and fostering international cooperation. The Trump administration's withdrawal from the JCPOA was a strategic blunder that has brought Iran closer to developing nuclear weapons and increased tensions in the region. Rejoining the deal would not only reduce these tensions, but also restore trust among global partners. The US must also address the underlying causes of conflict in the Middle East, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This long-standing issue requires a nuanced approach that goes beyond mere political posturing. This requires a balanced approach that recognizes the legitimate grievances of both sides and works towards a just and lasting peace. It involves acknowledging historical injustices and striving for solutions that ensure security and dignity for all parties involved. Diplomacy, not war, is the only way to break the cycle of violence. It is through dialogue and mutual respect that we can hope to create a future where peace prevails over conflict. The United States has a choice to make. It stands at a crossroads, where the decisions taken today will shape the geopolitical landscape for generations to come. It can continue down the path of militarism and confrontation, risking another catastrophic war in the Middle East. Such a path would only lead to further destruction and loss of life. Or it can choose the path of diplomacy and engagement, working to build a more peaceful and stable world. This path, though challenging, offers the promise of a better future for all. The future of the region, and indeed the world, depends on the choices we make today. It is a call to action for leaders and citizens alike to prioritize peace and stability over conflict and division.